take over the basement as long as Apollo's not here. I'm trying to work on their cat dynamics again. It's going, not great. Alright, fresh TvT now with the mic working and everything. Hopefully also gets put onto the VOD. You know what, just in case I'm going to start recording. In the bottom right of Dragon Scales, it is Clem. In the top left, it is HeRoMaRinE. I'm a pleb who usually just downloads off the Twitch VOD. Most other people, I would say, would record. But I had my PC recording every single stream that I did. And then I never really made use of it for the replay buffer. Which, you know, I probably should have gotten in the habit into, because it is a pretty cool thing that, you know, makes it look all professional production-wise. But, I forgot to, you know, delete, or set, like, an auto-deletion of the VODs that were recorded, so it's like, why is my computer full? Thank you, Cian Wolf, for the 25 months. Further into financially supporting the cats. Very important. And Barrett as well for the first resub of the day. 52 months in total. Thank you guys for the support. We are in a fantastic TvT. One that is heavily skewed towards Clem at this point. Really, the times have changed. But HeRoMaRinE always makes it look dicey, contested. You know, it's not something where it's like, oh, well, I'm gonna roll my eyes at having to cast this one again. Oy vey. No, it's still pretty fun. It's just that Clem has become so freaking, you know, Maru-esque, actually, I would say. In fact, Maru at this point, you know, he's still the most impressive Terran player when it comes to comebacks. I don't think that's something that Clem has better than Maru. But what I do think Clem has that's almost equal to Maru is the ability to come back. That just like we haven't seen as many impressive comebacks from him yet. We have to see more TvT, especially internationally. But then he also has, I think, taken Maru's power of being lethal in this matchup. It actually has felt like Maru has been unable to really win out so convincingly in the first 10 minutes of the game, kind of early to mid-game, right? Because that's what he was doing back when he was dominating TvT, and Clem was actually a victim to that back in 2021. Lost a best of 5 versus Maru in probably something like 15 minutes. Like, it was not good. You know, probably one of the low points of Clem's career there. But he did still make it to the round of 8 of his season finals, which... Anyway, so now it feels like Clem is the one who can be really lethal in the early game and has almost the same potential for a comeback, but hasn't been tested thoroughly on that. So... yeah, Clem's really perfected almost everything about his TvT after it was one of his worst matchups for the longest time. It wasn't even his worst matchup, it might have been his worst matchup, actually, when he was facing Maru, so that was just unfair. But yeah, it's now one of his best, probably, but again, he doesn't get to play it internationally as much as one would hope, since the Korean Terran is still the almightiest, you know, phrase that we have. But we've got some early game attack on the way. Clem does like this on Dragon Scales, despite there being a ramp available. Clem almost always gets aggressive, and he is not shy about actually moving on up here. Does not give a what, and he's hoping that the micro favors him. The grenades do go down for Clem, but it looks like HeRoMaRinE, kind of with just that pre-set up, is not going to have too many problems dealing with this. The timely arrival of an extra 2 Marines certainly helping out there, but it looks like Clem was probably even expecting a little bit more panic from HeRoMaRinE, and HeRoMaRinE has learned how to handle that without forcing weird shenanigans. Sometimes, you know, I would say often the response there is to pull back immediately and micro and buy a little bit of time, but then I think it gets complicated depending on what opener you choose. So HeRoMaRinE, you know, if I can guess that Clem's going to do this on Dragon Scales, HeRoMaRinE certainly can. Has probably figured the best opener in which he can even just kind of passively deal with that. So figuring out the build order as well as the execution. So that was, believe it or not, a potential moment of game over, because I really have to emphasize how lethal Clem has gotten. He has won on this map in similar situations so many times in the Open Cup. But not this time. HeRoMaRinE's going to get a scout into the main base with that Living Reaper and maybe even get an SCV. He has missed the arrival of the departure of the medevac and is about to see the arrival. The Cyclone is in position for something like this, and Clem is going to get locked on without doing anything. There we go, a boost kind of trying to get on top of the Cyclone to turn the tables. Doesn't really work out, however, and that medevac is awfully low. You can see the amount of micro that's coming down here. Wouldn't mind only gets a Marine, injures another one, but the medevac will escape with 3 Marines still alive. It's very light pressure anyway, but oh no, a tank just went down to the remaining early game units. Oh, wow. That's not supposed to happen, I can tell you that much, and that's just another example of what's making Clem so freaking good in this matchup, man. You being able to use those units to kill a freaking tank? Clearly, HeRoMaRinE thought that that would be enough to push away any second attack, because he was definitely expecting the second attack. I think that also is something that Clem does every single time, if he has any units left over anyway. But the fact that the tank didn't get repaired just means that HeRoMaRinE didn't take the threat of it, you know, seriously enough. Hindsight 2020 and all that. I really don't blame him for losing a tank, thinking that would have been good enough. And you know what's even worse is that so many units apparently survived. Yeah. The 3 Reapers can still threaten a backstab at any moment. Good lord. Well, that's one less tank for the Red Terran. Clem ahead by 5 workers. Actually, not ahead by a tank. He did spend a lot of time producing Hellions and his own Cyclone. Yeah, which died. That probably was what happened, right? That makes so much more sense. The Cyclone was the one that mostly killed the tank. Like, there's no way that the Reapers and Hellions killed it and then they were all alive. So, that was a trade. And one that I would still say is warranted, especially as the Cyclone is quickly losing its power. Its main job is protecting this kind of early transition over into mid-game. And then it can still be useful, don't get me wrong, but it's generally dying off. And this would have been an even worse scenario, I suppose, for Clem if he was 3 tanks to 5. So, you know, the fact that the kill still went down is considerable. It's not as cool as I thought it was. Nonetheless, Clem in a very cool position for this TvT. His stim is not as fast, but pretty much close enough. Again, he's been up in workers for a lot of this, although quickly disappearing. Raven auto-turret harassment in the main base. Now, this could be a problem for HeRoMaRinE, as he will no longer have Ravens on the front lines, but maybe he won't need them. Clem responds to the engagement, goes through the interference matrix, and will try and tackle this, nip it in the bud, get his 3rd CC down and actually mining, and it looks like he will do just that. Unfortunately, does lose his medevac and his Raven to the Vikings of HeRoMaRinE. HeRoMaRinE at least making sure to get that before he leaves. And auto turrets came back into the main base, something that Clem apparently was not anticipating. His Ravens, or his Vikings, not able to kill the Ravens fast enough, and in fact, not at all. All the Vikings and Ravens of HeRoMaRinE are able to escape. Those are pretty powerful units, powerful for the rest of the TvT. And he doesn't really have to worry about losing out on the air game, which, you know, probably would have been a worry if he had lost every single unit. 12 SCVs down. Clem now behind by 9 is going to go for the counterattack. He did just tear down a lot of HeRoMaRinE's tanks while keeping his own alive, but the army supplies really aren't all that different, and those Vikings on the ground are still heavy fighters in such an early TvT battle where you're still very tech-based, not so much Marine-based. That is changing, however, and Clem is even rallying Marines forward, more and more helping out here with stim included against such a threat, because that's really what the bulk of HeRoMaRinE's army is, are these Vikings. But they're them landed against stim Marines is not what you want. They might still have to do so. Auto turrets right now temporarily covering that lone tank from HeRoMaRinE, but HeRoMaRinE is absolutely on the ropes, repairing up whatever units that he can, hoping the Ravens will get back energy soon. Somehow they get even faster just because you wish really hard for it. And then trying to get everything lined up back on the macro side. He's lost a couple of SCVs. He did forget combat shields for a little while. So now Clem is about to have the upgrade lead in that department. The Vikings decide that they're not going to help out back at home, so they're going to go for a counterattack. Definitely a good idea, because they really weren't helping back at home. The scans were available for Clem, so the lack of air presence wasn't necessarily harming him. The Vikings, however, don't collect as many lives as they would have hoped. Only 3 SCVs killed, and not that big of a distraction either. Would have been a lot lovelier if he had gotten, you know, 10 SCVs and then a tank that tried to take care of things by themselves, which didn't happen. Clem's supply doesn't look all that great, but I feel like it is really deceptive. The 9 Vikings is just, it's not the best thing to have in the situation. Marines were kind of hiding in the back lines. They come forward to take care of the drop on top of the tanks. The tank's still mostly alive. Two of them taken out of the equation. However, it might just barely be enough for HeRoMaRinE to push past this. And in fact, that's exactly the case here. That last tank gonna get at least one shot before it finally goes down. And a reinforcing tank came forward as well to also get another shot. So the supplies do match each other a little bit better after all of that scuffle. But HeRoMaRinE finally able to get his third CC back to mining. That's been the real sore point this entire time. The combat shields of HeRoMaRinE also was late to the actual breakout, which kind of sucked. That only just finished towards the tail end. So HeRoMaRinE, again, like it's surprising that he was able to keep such a hefty supply, but I think what helped is that his production was already lined up before things got really troublesome. And he did break out, even without that combat shields, and now he's going to go for an immediate counterattack. 3 medevacs full of units coming on over, 2 tanks, a canceled 4th command center, as Clem figured he was going to be safe on his side of the map. He was wrong about that. HeRoMaRinE, even looking to continue this pressure forward, isn't going to over-invest and put everything in the natural, which would not have gone well, but rather just siege up those tanks in a really nice position. But we got Clem also going for a drop inside the main base, delaying the upgrades, trying to drop on top of the tanks of the front lines. Did not really work out here. Both guys just swinging fists at each other at this point, but Clem is stabilizing back at home, as is HeRoMaRinE. HeRoMaRinE actually able to kill the attacking force of Clem, puts him in a better situation once again as far as the supply goes. But HeRoMaRinE is going to have to be worried about, however, are those 2-2 upgrades about halfway done for Clem overall, where HeRoMaRinE was delayed on that armory, but those engineering bays are potentially in a vulnerable area. It looks like Clem very much on guard in his natural, realizing that that could be a pressure point. HeRoMaRinE sees an opportunity to grab a tank. Good unsiege from Clem. Unfortunately, that one shot was enough to basically get the kill, and more SCVs are going to be denied mining. HeRoMaRinE continuing to abuse this area while staying nice and safe and comfy at home. But again, missing the 2-2. He's also missing the 4th command center, which is now finished for Clem. Probably going to try and move over to the left side as Clem goes for the break. HeRoMaRinE unable to reinforce his Terran units. It's going to be forced to abandon ship on them, basically. He's going to try and extend the time of their use by going for a drop in the main, but that will cost him a couple medevacs. The distraction might be worth it if it actually hits the 4th base, which Clem is sending over to the right side. I thought he was going to go and take the left, but that's might be a little too awkward. Clem not realizing it's the full might of the Terran force here. That was a big mistake. Perhaps overestimating how powerful his upgrades were. His +2 was done, but that was the entire HeRoMaRinE army. Oh no! The 4th CC goes down. The 3rd CC is in trouble, and Clem overall is in trouble. He is going to tap out. HeRoMaRinE, relentless in his aggression, finally catches Clem entirely off guard. And HeRoMaRinE with a pretty great first TvT. Overall, looking better than Clem as far as the engagements and the multitasking goes. Clem did manage to find all of the really early game micro benefits and take an SCV lead, and even had some of the more foundational things going well for him. Again, 4th CC 2-2 on the way. But HeRoMaRinE didn't buckle under the pressure that Clem applied. Kind of just stuck to his good macro and was able to distract Clem long enough, kind of take the wind out of Clem's sails. He's usually the one in control. Clem's most recent loss to HeRoMaRinE, as far as the series goes, was literally a month ago. Maybe it's a once-a-month type of a thing. Before that, though, it was 4 months ago, so never mind. Clem is still the overwhelming favorite. It's always fairly close. In their most recent Home Story Cup, the kind of tiny one that I'm not sure a lot of people watched. I'm not trying to be rude, just saying that apparently ended with a Clem 4-3. So very, very close. In the bottom right down a game, it is Clem. In the top left, it is HeRoMaRinE, now arriving on Babylon. I know Clem's typical build order on Dragon Scales, but I pretty much only remember it when it's arriving. I'm like, oh yeah, he really likes us on this map. I don't actually know what he does on Babylon. I don't think either player is really tied to a build order, by the way, on a map. It just is Clem more often than not doing something like that on Dragon Scales. But otherwise, I think they vary up their opener quite a lot. Factory expand from both parties. Mostly typical factory expands between the two. It's the last time they proxy each other. They play so often, I'm sure they have. I'm absolutely sure they have. Clem, now a game away from being knocked out of an open cup. He was unable to win the last one. He is still looking to overtake HeRoMaRinE in the gold medals. He's behind by 2, I believe, if I remember correctly. So, 2 gold medals of the open cup to match HeRoMaRinE, 1 more after to actually surpass him. I said it would happen before the end of the year. Still got, 2 months. 3 months. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. But Max Pack seemingly figuring out a new way to counter Clem is a little concerning. And then HeRoMaRinE also perhaps figuring out what he can do better against Clem. Could even be threatening another gold medal on his side, which he's not been able to get for many, many weeks at this point, I would say. When is the last time HeRoMaRinE won an open cup? But that's the main story, I would say, between the two. That gold medal count. And then everyone else is nowhere close, so we don't really talk about them. Double Marine opener, actually, from HeRoMaRinE. No Reapers whatsoever. Whereas Clem is going for typical Reaper opener. Sees that it was a reactored Marine opener. Yes, he does. Mancer on the high ground from Clem. Which actually is going to be really warranted because HeRoMaRinE isn't stopping at a factory expand. He is going all the way up to a starport. Fairly uncommon when it comes to the big leagues, TvT. And something that Clem absolutely would love to scout. Losing 1 Reaper in his attempt to kind of circumvent the Marines on the Reaper hop-up. Because you have to see it. This is... Alright. Here we go. I think this is a terrible build. A lot of people on the ladder use this build because it is kind of cheesy in the way that not necessarily that if you don't scout it, you die to it, but more like if you don't know how to handle it, you die to it. It's a little more technical, a little more finesse than some other cheeses where like if you scout it, then you probably just change your build order a little bit. So, I personally don't like it. But I think there's a lot of merit to doing it against them when you play over and over and over again, because it is a surprise. And there is a chance that Clem is just entirely unaware it's even happening. Now, he does have some scout going on, so he's not totally unaware. But we'll see if he actually mishandles it. I would say already having his own tank as opposed to a Cyclone puts him in a comfier position, because his tank even sieges up, denying the natural being kind of breached. And the main base isn't hittable. That's a word. That's good English. From this particular tank position. He could go closer and actually hit the barracks, but, is it really worth it, I guess? Marine drop, sure, but now a second tank is out, and, Clem, if he had the Cyclone, he would have been able to get, 1 premature engagement, I guess. But then it would have had to have simply retreated. The tank, I think, really makes this a lot easier. Although, overwhelmed in the natural, wasn't expecting that. Now is forced to bring down the SCVs, and Clem could still be in trouble to this cheese. And the tank for Clem will be getting a lot of shots off. HeRoMaRinE actually did not focus fire, if he even could. The SCV pool seems to be warranted. 8 SCVs go down. However, keep in mind, HeRoMaRinE entirely on 1 base seems to do more damage than that. Clem actually still handling this like a pro should. Calm, collected, concaves, and overwhelming numbers against the tech-heavy starts from the opposing Terran. It's not quite over yet, but that break is rather convincing. This is usually the break that leads to the inevitable win of the 2-base player, I would say. Clem can't play loosey-goosey. He can't just be like, la, 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 la. But, I mean, well, he can, oh, that wasn't too good. That's not too good. That's not great. Not only did he not anticipate the positioning of his opponent there, but he also didn't focus fire his tanks. Oh no, and he just lost one of the landed Vikings, and it will cost HeRoMaRinE all of his Vikings. And now it's 2-1, as HeRoMaRinE is the one who's obviously not... Defender's advantage is not kicking in. So this is still okay for Clem, but yeah, he was supposed to at least get some counter damage done. Now the tanks of HeRoMaRinE are just going to run on forward. The SCV is once again having to be pulled, but that is an effective pull once again. GG, Clem will hold against the cheese, and I love that as a game for an example to put up on like a YouTube or something as to why this actually isn't the best build. I feel like so validated. I think that HeRoMaRinE would also agree, by the way. Like, I think HeRoMaRinE, he is very technically minded when he discusses StarCraft. He'll say he's a straight shooter, no doubt about that. So he'll say, like, this isn't very good, that's not very good, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But as a professional pro gamer, he acknowledges, I believe, the, you know, effectiveness of a cheese, the surprise factor of kind of a less than great build, and he does experiment in these open cups more than I think he would if it was a prestigious round of 4 or something like that. So yeah, I think he would be like, yeah, I just wanted to see what happens. I don't think he was expecting a lot from it. That's not something he's going to be using, and then I'm the one that's wrong for saying that it's not very good. But he wanted to probably try it and see how Clem reacted to it. And again, if Clem had opened up in a more typical fashion, like with a Cyclone first, or even a further delay on his factory production, you know, Hellions instead of any of the big bad units, that is a little more complicated. And then all of his mistakes probably add up enough to kill him. But because his foundation was already pretty strong, I think he was allowed a number of mistakes because of his opener, and also because of the, I would say, lack of validity of that build that HeRoMaRinE did in the professional scene. Bottom left, Clem. Top right, HeRoMaRinE. Tied up series now. Yep. This is where I'm all like holier than thou. I really have a very low opinion of it. Whenever I see an opposing Terran do it, I always roll my eyes. It's been a while since I've even personally lost to it. Now, obviously, the execution of my opponent's not going to be good as HeRoMaRinE, but it's a lot to do with keeping a calm head and actually having your mechanics down, which that's why I would say the pros never lose to it, is because the biggest problem with a cheese like that is that it is a lot of early game pressure, and you know, touch someone who's like, you know, Masters 3. If you just distract them in the lightest way possible, they can crumble. 100%. Masters is definitely not what some people think it is. It's still pretty bad. They'll crumble. They'll be like, oh no, my supply depot. Oh no, my reactor didn't build. Oh god, I forgot to start the tank. And that's how they lose. But professionals don't blink. You know, they don't get that unnerved, especially at this super high level. And that's usually what actually makes the build worth it, is just the early game distraction and offset. I've given my reasonings. As I said, I think HeRoMaRinE is more than willing to acknowledge it's not the best build. So Clem is going to go into a factory expand again. HeRoMaRinE probably going to do the same. There is a different version of the 1-1 one-on-one base. There's what we saw there. There's also the double medevac drop into the main base. Both the same category of cheese, in my opinion, which is that it doesn't even really work if it's unscouted. It works if you confuzzle your opponent. So I don't think HeRoMaRinE is going to do that again. He's not so desperate as to think that's the only thing that would... It just... No. That last one was a throwaway. That last one was like, oh, let's see. And now we're moving on into still potentially some aggressive maneuvers. I mean, HeRoMaRinE could still try and go for a 2-base attack. You know, 5 barracks, 2 bases. That's very uncommon nowadays, but it's something that can be done and would have, I think, a little more success, even if it's not done for a reason. It's worse nowadays than it used to be. I would still find that it has a little more success. You know, there's a little more to play around with, I suppose, with a 2-base all-in grid or 1 base. He could play mech. He does occasionally do so on these open cups, so you know, he could still play a little bit differently if he thinks that's what's going to win him the series. But that first game that he won was a straight-up macro game. Definitely a little precarious, but he did win it. 2 SCVs go down, unfortunately. Clem loses both Reapers for it. I mean, this is not a build that emphasizes the early game units, so for Clem, they're a bit throwaway anyway. The only question would be, can he defend the counterattack, which is really no question at all. Cyclone's already popped. It's 4 Reapers, though, and 2 Hellions, so the Cyclone probably doesn't want to be doing this all by its lonesome. That's not a full wall, as you can see, but it's enough of a setup that the Cyclone can retreat successfully. Unfortunately, can't be said for the SCVs, which 3 of them have lost their lives. Cyclone is a vulnerable unit overall, but Clem is going to be able to hold on. HeRoMaRinE going to back away. Second Cyclone was on the way, too. So that would not have snowballed anyway. And now that second Cyclone was not scouted by HeRoMaRinE, which could be a little bit of a bummer. Maybe he'll go back in soon, but otherwise the scouting is limited from both parties. Clem also not really knowing exactly what HeRoMaRinE's follow-up plan is. And what's funny is that they both are in fact going for a medevac drop. One with 2 Cyclones, and the other one with only 1. 2 usually beats 1. Maths. But it depends on how the lock-ons go, I guess. Or if they actually meet each other. Haha, they're not going to meet each other. Alright, well, there's a tank already out for Clem on the defense. HeRoMaRinE is going to be in a similar position. I don't expect this to do a whole lot, but this is maybe one of the better case scenarios for both parties. I'd be basically, if someone wasn't looking at their medevac across the map and they got locked on, that would have been the absolute worst case. But yeah, neither player caught that off guard. Oh, Clem's double Cyclone drop killed the defending tank of HeRoMaRinE. It must have popped and not been sieged. That's a bit unfortunate. Clem, you know, he did lose a supply depot, but basically thanks to his tank and it only being 1 lock-on, which he's going to have to combat the Cyclone as much as he possibly can. No, he's not going to get it! Oh, they trade out. Tank down and Cyclone down. A couple of Marines also losing their lives, but here come the Cyclones of Clem back to take care of the medevac. And HeRoMaRinE overall, the bigger loss, but not tremendously so. Well, he lost a tank and his medevac. No, I mean, still the supplies are very close, right? So it's not the end of the world. Clem able to repair up 2 Cyclones and still having that medevac to be a pest later on is good news for him. He's also going to be ahead in the Raven count, as HeRoMaRinE actually built a second medevac. Oh, that is very surprising. He might have been hoping to go for a follow-up 2 medevac drop somewhere. This has obviously halved his potential follow-up. He's still going to try, because it's better to be a pest as long as you possibly can, but this is already not going very well. Not well at all. He's managing to escape with the medevac, but loses the tank. That's, you know, getting worse, obviously. It's still only 1 tank to 1. Okay, 1 tank to 2 now. It's very close to the tank count, though. Stim's going to start up for both parties very soon. Yeah, Barrack's going to be swapped over. So HeRoMaRinE matching the Raven count of Clem and matching the tank count effectively. And Stim will be close enough to say that this is still a very close game. You know, a lot of the cool moments have seemingly favored Clem, but not enough to really push him into a supreme lead. Things can definitely change. Like Clem in a similar position, perhaps, as the first game, actually, which different micro battles, but somewhat similar idea. He's maybe won some of the early game as they transition over in a mid game. That's fantastic. He's taken that 3-worker lead, which sounds very familiar, but we saw HeRoMaRinE hold on and push back with great effect. He won. So that can absolutely still happen here. As their production gets set up, both of them getting up to 5 barracks. Clem is faster than that. Consequence of his superior economy, which is now up by 5, by the way. Their ATC saturated a little bit faster. Second factory probably also going to be faster for Clem, too. So that's 2 Cyclones to guard against drops. Is even building under the missile turret. This should secure him up for any amount of drops up until you're at like 6 or 8 medevacs later game. In which case, HeRoMaRinE could absolutely still go for a Doom drop. I mean, look at all the space that happens on Ancient Cistern, but it'd be very dangerous to do so earlier on than that. 4th CC, faster for HeRoMaRinE. He might have identified a lack of ability to be the aggressor, considering how the early game went. Perhaps realizing that his sim's a little bit later, his combat shield's a little bit later, his production's a little bit later. Unfortunately, he does not realize that Clem has already moved across the map, sieges up a tank right in the face of Clem's army. And the other tanks are not in position. Interference matrix will come down, but for both parties means that HeRoMaRinE will be without any fighting force in the blink of an eye, and that'll be it. That'll be game. That's, that happened quickly, but that was all because HeRoMaRinE did not realize the attack was already on the way. If he realized, he would have not lost that initial tank. The rest of the tanks would have been sieged to protect the third CC as opposed to being a little off-center. And then his own Raven's initial, the faster interference matrix would have contributed more. But yeah, pretty sure this is game. HeRoMaRinE still not able to quite figure out what beats the kid here. GG's. Clem, 2-1, moves on to the round of 4.